Hello, my name is Father Lawrence Jagdfeld. I am a Franciscan friar of the Sacred Heart Province, and I also serve as administrator of CUSA, an apostolate of persons with chronic illness and/or disability. For the past few weeks, we have been accompanying Jesus as he makes his way to Jerusalem, teaching and preaching on his way. Last week, we heard that he stopped for a meal at the home of a Pharisee, and now he has taken up the journey once again. Great crowds were traveling with Jesus, and he turned and addressed them. If anyone comes to me without hating his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Which of you, wishing to construct a tower, does not first sit down and calculate the cost to see if there is enough for its completion? Otherwise, after laying the foundation and finding himself unable to finish the work, the onlookers should laugh at him and say, "This one began to build but did not have the resources to finish." Or what king, marching into battle, would not first sit down and decide whether, with 10,000 troops, he can successfully oppose another king advancing upon him with 20,000 troops? But if not, while he is still far away, he will send a delegation to ask for peace terms. In the same way, any one of you who does not renounce all his possessions cannot be my disciple. Our first reaction to this preaching of Jesus is one of complete misunderstanding. We simply do not understand how he can ask us to hate our parents, to hate our children and our wife, to hate our brothers and sisters. And indeed, in the society in which Jesus lived, family was everything. If one's family and friends did not come first, then nothing was worth living for in the minds of these people. Marriage was usually conducted in terms of families. The cousins would marry in order to keep the family together. Sons stayed with their father. Wives lived with their husband's father, with their husband's brothers. So family was the touchstone for this society. So you can imagine that just as we find these words to be very difficult, the people of his own time would have looked at Jesus as if he were crazy, to suggest that they might have to hate their families. The craziness continues when he continues by saying, "You must take up your cross and follow after me if you wished to be my disciple." The cross was for these people the most shameful form of execution that could possibly happen to them. Only a person completely devoid of honor would be crucified. And yet, these sayings about hating mother and father, about hating family, and taking up one's cross are given to us as Jesus is making his way to Jerusalem, where he will indeed be crucified. We have to look at these sayings a little bit more closely to really understand what Jesus is saying. First of all, the translation here is somewhat problematic. I suggest that perhaps the word prefer should be used instead of the word hate for the Greek that the gospel was written in. We must prefer Jesus to our families. And there we know that what Jesus is really speaking of is a matter of priorities. we have to prefer to follow after him rather than to follow the crowd, to follow the group. Remember once again that these people did not think of themselves as individuals, but as members of a group. And Jesus is forming his own group, his own family, his own faction, when he calls his disciples to walk with him. Immediately after these two very, very difficult sayings, Jesus gives us parables or examples from the real world. And these parables must be listened to in order to understand what Jesus means by priority. We would never venture upon something that we didn't think we could finish. We would never plan to build something if we didn't think we had the resources. Even today, contractors who venture out on building projects without having the adequate resources become somewhat of a humiliated figure in our society. The plan here that Jesus is speaking of, however, has nothing to do with building a tower or defeating an army. The plan here has to do with completing a mission, the mission that has been given to him by his Father. And as he is walking to Jerusalem, as he is contemplating the death that he will die there, it may have crossed his mind that people will stand to the side and laugh at him because he did not have the resources to fulfill the mission. And in fact, when we get to the Passion narrative, this is exactly what we will hear, that the high priests, the Pharisees, the chief priests, the Jewish authorities stood off to the side and laughed at him. He said that he was going to be able to destroy the temple. Why can't he come down off that cross and save himself? Once again, we see how Jesus' examples are really aimed at helping us to understand what will happen to him in Jerusalem. So this gospel fits very, very carefully into Luke's narrative about Jesus' journey to Jerusalem and what will happen to him there. What does it have to say for us? Well, certainly it does have a great deal to say to us if we are, as we profess, Jesus' disciples. We have to make him our priority, and we have to make sure that we have the strength to finish the mission. That strength can only come through our persistence in prayer, another thing that we have heard about along the way, through our persistence in sacrifice, another thing that we have heard about as Jesus makes his way, and as we nourish ourselves at the table of the Lord. For more information about CUSA, please go to our website at www.cuson.org or visit us on Facebook.